playoff disappointment, new GM, same head coach, and what's ahead for the LA Kings with Russell Morgan of Hockey Royalty on this edition of Locked On LA Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Kings fans, welcome to Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On LA Kings your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. I'm Eddie Garcia, your host of Locked On LA Kings. I've worked in sports media for the past 30 years, also one of the co-hosts of Locked On NHL Game Night, a nightly podcast and YouTube show that recaps the night in the NHL, and a passionate LA Kings fan for over 30 years. We are talking off-season for the LA Kings after, of course, another playoff disappointment. Here to discuss that and more is friend of the show, Russell Morgan from Hockey Royalty. Russell, you can follow him at NHL Russell on X and Twitter. And he's also a part of the Hockey Royalty podcast and website. Hello, Russell. How are you?
What's up, Eddie? How you doing, man?
I'm doing okay. It has been a little while since we've had you on the show. You and I had some conversations in the press box during the postseason at Crypto.com Arena, but we haven't had you on since the season came to an end. And as disappointing as it is to talk about, I did want to get your thoughts on another postseason disappointment. Maybe the most disappointing postseason in a while. I thought the Game 4 loss might be the most disappointed I've ever been for a Kings game. And I was around for the McSorley incident, but I was a new fan then. I didn't really understand how big of a deal that was. I thought, we'll be back next year. But yeah, it was tough. How was it for you, and your thoughts on another playoff postseason disappointment?
Yeah, pretty much echoing everything you just said. It's funny, Eddie. I remember, I think the last time I talked to you, right before Game 5 in the press box, you came up to me in my chair and you pretty much asked me like how I'm feeling about the game. And like I think I told you, like I was feeling pretty confident at that time. But I think deep down inside, I kind of knew, especially after you said what had happened in Game 4, giving up the goal, 28 seconds left, everything that had transpired in Game 3 as well. I think deep down I knew like something bad was about to happen. And sure enough, Game 5 ended up being probably the worst game of the season, especially even at home, considering how well that the Kings had played at home all year. And after that game, I mean, like the media walk, it was like the most quiet I've heard like a group of like 30 people could be, because everybody knew what had happened. The season was over right then and there. Like, Andrew Nola, who I sit next to in the press box, he pretty much told me like, if they end up winning Game 6, he's like, I'm gonna walk from my house to the arena. That's how confident he was that they were going to end up losing in Edmonton in Game 6. And I kind of felt the same way. I mean, after Game 5 was over, they pretty much got beaten. If it weren't for Darcy Kemper, it would have been the score would have been a lot more lopsided than it was. And yeah, it was just an overall disappointing series, the most disappointing of the 4 so far. And now it came to a point, it's like, okay, like where do we go from here at that point? And it's like, you just put your palms up in the air and you just don't even know. And now we got a new GM, I'm sure we'll talk about. And yeah, it's just, there's a lot of sadness and frustration. And I'm sure the fans the fans are feeling the same. I'm sure the players and the coaching staff is feeling the same as well.
I don't want to relive it all, but there's one specific thing I do want to get your opinion on. And that is, of course, how the Kings played in the third period in games 3 and 4. And I know you were at the exit interviews, and, Jim Hiller, didn't seem to think there was anything wrong. Not that there wasn't anything wrong, but not anything they could have done differently. The players were saying they were not instructed to play any differently in those periods. Drew Doughty said it's just human nature to sit back when you have a lead, which, I'm watching these playoff games now, as I know you are, and it's like, wow, funny how these teams have leads and they're not sitting back. But anyway, do you believe, or how much of a factor did the coaching staff have in that situation, whether they said to sit back and the players are covering for them, or the players were sitting back and the coaches didn't say, what the hell are we doing? Let's not stand at our own blue line and just let them sit back there and do whatever they want. And anyway, what I'm starting to get upset. How much do you think Jim Hiller is responsible for what happened in the third periods of those two games?
Yeah, I've gone back and forth on this. I think it's just 50-50. I just point to both the players and the coaches having equal blame here. You could see it. I mean, right? It's like the way that the Kings are playing strategically, it seemed like they just sat back into a 1-3-1 style and got away from any of the good forechecking that brought a lot of quality scoring chances or brought a lot of offense going their way, and what gave them the leads that they had. And they just went back to that passive style that we've seen so much of the last few seasons, especially in the playoffs, and what's led them to 4 straight now losses in the first round. So yeah, I give the coaching staff, and not to mention a lot of the deployment that was issued. I mean, it was pretty much just the 4 defensemen that we've seen throughout the season. I mean, that's been what Hiller's MO has been throughout the entire season. So that was really no surprise. I mean, I've talked about it multiple times. I mean, whenever the Kings have leads, Jim Hiller's always been totally fine and comfortable with going with Anderson, Doughty, and Edmondson. Gavrikov as the 4 defensemen he's going to deploy every other shift. So there's that, and as part of the coaching staff where I point to the blame there. But then, like you said, the players, where they talk about how it's just human nature, and we heard that from Doughty, we heard that from other players as well, how it's just human nature for players to sit back and play with, or teams to sit back and play when they have the lead. But this team needs to have players that have that fire and that grit to not do that, right? Like, this is where I look at the players that they need to target in the offseason. You need to get the players that don't have that mindset, that don't have that all of a sudden, okay, we have a lead, let's just sit back and protect it. No, you need to have players now, or even just the players that are in-house that need to have that mindset to think like, okay, we have a lead, we need to keep pushing. We need to step on the throats, like that famous outside follow quote from a couple of years ago, where you say like, okay, we can't let this team back in it. We can't sit back and just give them chances on over and over and over again because of what's happened in the past and how much it's hurt us. So it's got to be both. It's got to be a coaching staff that now needs to look at themselves in the mirror and say, okay, what did we do wrong here? How can we fix things going forward? Maybe change things, maybe whether it be strategically or even the player deployment. And it's got to be on the players too to look at themselves and be like, okay, we have the lead. We can't just sit back and let this team dictate what happens in the next 20 minutes or the last 20 minutes of the game. They need to step on the throats and be more aggressive when they hold the leads. And I think that'll lead to a little bit better outcomes, hopefully, in the future.
So Ken Holland is the new GM, and we're going to get more into that in a minute. But if you, Russell Morgan, had been hired as the new general manager of the Kings, would you have made a coaching change for next season?
You know, I went back and forth on this a lot, actually, too. And I know there's a lot of people that are upset with Jim Hiller. I mean, obviously, myself included, with a lot of the decisions that he made. We just talked about, obviously, the challenge. That was a big one, too. But I'm kind of happy with Jim Hiller coming back as a head coach, to be honest with you. I think he did a lot of good that got the Kings into this position, and I would hope that he learns a lot from the mistakes that he made in the playoffs. You know, I'm a big Chargers fan. Obviously, we've talked about the Chargers, and especially now that they have Jim Harbaugh. I love a lot of the things that Jim Harbaugh has been able to do, and I think a lot of it has to do with the buy-in that the players have from Jim Harbaugh and the relationships he's been able to build with those players. That's a huge reason, I think, for the Chargers' success, especially last year. And I think you can say the same thing about what Jim Hiller has been able to bring to the Kings, especially this past season. I mean, the buy-in has been huge, and we've heard it from players like Warren Fogle, Kevin Fiala, Andrei Kuzmenko in his short stint with LA, how much that Jim Hiller's impact has been on them, and how much or that impact has been able to improve their play, especially during the regular season. I know it didn't garner postseason success, but I think that's a big factor in terms of what a head coach has been able to bring, especially in the locker room. So I'm willing to bring Hiller back and give him another chance. And I think Ken Holland even mentioned it in his introductory press conference, where he talked about hopefully having a coach learn from, was really his first full-time head coach. I know he was the head coach during the playoff series before that, but now that he's had the full year to have his, stamp on the team, I hope there's some things that he's able to learn going into next season. And now that he has a GM, that maybe they have there's open dialogue talking about maybe what Ken Holland has seen from the outside now that he's now the general manager of the team. Hopefully they can have a dialogue and talk about what they need to learn and what things need to improve on going into next year.
All right, we are going to get a lot more into the hiring of Ken Holland as Kings general manager. That's next on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending all in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared accounts, personal accounts, and set goals and stay on the same page without the stress. Take the control out of your finances with Monarch Money, or take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com. You'll get 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year. We're continuing with Russell Morgan from Hockey Royalty, hockeyroyalty.com. I did want to touch on Rob Blake for a minute. Obviously, he and the Kings part ways after the season. Looking back on 8 years with Rob Blake as GM, obviously no playoff series wins, which is ultimately why he's no longer the GM. But how will you look back on his tenure as general manager?
I think Rob Blake did overall. I think he did a lot of good for this team. I think he had left the team in a better place than they had been, probably previous to his blueprint for what the team building is now. So, yeah, I mean, it's obviously postseason success is huge. That's probably the biggest reason, like you said, he's not here. But he made a lot of good moves. He made a lot of big moves, and I want a GM that's going to make those shrewd moves. I mean, trading your franchise goaltender Jonathan Quick, I'm sure that's going to be up there with one of his bigger moves. But yeah, I mean, and obviously there's a lot of mistakes there as well with the Dubois trade and everything else on top of that. So, but yeah, overall I would say he did a lot of good, and I think his tenure as GM for the Kings can probably be looked on as maybe a good one, if that's right to say, even though there is no postseason success. But yeah, I've always wanted to have a GM that's willing to make the risky moves, and he sure as hell did that. So it's just, you would just hope that there would be some postseason success mixed into that unfortunately never happened.
Yeah, I know when I talked about it, it just kind of felt like it was time for a change. And I think a lot of people were concerned that maybe the Kings would just promote someone that was already there, Mark Bergevin, Nelson Emerson, the assistant GM, but they do go outside the organization and they bring in a Hall of Famer in Ken Holland, multiple cup winner in Detroit, recently was in Edmonton. What were your thoughts on Ken Holland being hired as the Kings' next GM?
Yeah, it's definitely not the sexiest name that would probably be available. A lot of Kings fans are maybe hoping for, like a first-year GM, progressive mind, someone new, fresh out the box. But I mean, I think Ken Holland is exactly the GM that this team needs right now. They need a guy that, I know Ken Holland's Stanley Cups came quite a while ago, but you need a guy that's going to come in and really take this team over the hump from being just a playoff shoe-in team each year, whatever seed they are, to a team that can legitimately contend for a Stanley Cup. And yeah, there's been a lot made of the reference to 105 points, especially last year. I think I heard an interview from Ken Holland today on NHL Network Radio talking about 105 points a kid. I'm like, man, there's another meme coming out, I'm sure. But it has to reference because there is a good team here. The building blocks are in place, so you just need to find those extra pieces to be able to get them over the hump. So I get it, and that's what Ken Holland is going to be in here to do. And Pierre LeBrun shared an article, I believe, on The Athletic just as recently as yesterday, talking about, and Ken Holland mentioned the fact that he's going to be aggressive in his first year here and first offseason here coming up to improve this team. And I love hearing that. And obviously, a guy like Ken Holland, who has that pedigree, who has that track record, and is probably on maybe the final end, I guess, as maybe this might be his last team or his last go as a general manager. He's not just going to sit back and just let this team be who they are and who they've been in the past. He's going to go out there and really put his stamp on the team. And I think that's a good a good reason for him to be the GM right now for this team that desperately needs the GM to be aggressive and find those the missing pieces that this team needs.
I do think, though, there is a little bit of a mixed message being sent out because, I mean, if Ken Holland is aggressive, then that certainly would change things. But they talked about tweaks, right? Tweak was kind of the key word. And I get that 105 points and tying a record for points and wins in a regular season is not nothing. That's something. So you can understand the tweaks. But then on the other hand, Luke Robitaille is saying it's not about beating one team. It's not about winning one series. It's about winning a Stanley Cup. Are tweaks enough for the Kings to go from no first round playoff wins to suddenly Stanley Cup contender? I don't know. It seems to me like which one is it? Is it just little tweaks? Or are we going for the Stanley Cup? Because I don't know that those two things are going hand in hand. Do you agree?
No, I agree. Yeah, it can't be little tweaks. I mean, there's some big issues in my opinion, at least on the blue line specifically. I mean, there are two holes that they need to fill on that spot. Brant Clark obviously had a great first full season playing in the NHL, and he's only going to get better as time goes by. I don't necessarily believe he's going to be like a legitimate top four defender as soon as next year. That time's going to come shortly, but as soon as next year, maybe not. The coaching staff, obviously Jim Hiller's going to be returning. They sure as hell don't trust Jordan Spence in a big moment for whatever reason. And I maybe can see it there, especially in the playoffs where the intensity's picked up a little bit. He did struggle a little bit, but even overall, I think he's a pretty good defenseman. But all that withstanding, I think there's and with Gavrikov, who I think that team should let walk in free agency, considering the price tag he's probably going to have. There's two pieces or two holes right there that I think the team needs to fill. So there's that end. And then there's also some big pieces, I think, up front. I mean, you talk about Andrei Kuzmenko, who was traded and was a big and provided a big impact and produced a lot of points for the team. But if he doesn't come back, I mean, that's another first line wing spot that needs to be filled. And you could talk about other positions too. I think there's a desperate need for a right shot center that this team doesn't have. And more veteran presence, I guess, maybe on the fourth line or even down in the bottom six overall that needs to be improved upon because we saw how the deployment was with the forward lines too. So yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think there's a lot of big tweaks and not just minimal tweaks that this team needs to make in the offseason once free agency or even in the trade market.
Well, I definitely want to get into some names in a minute, but one more kind of front office question. We just saw the Toronto Maple Leafs say goodbye to a Hall of Famer in team president Brendan Shanahan. If this doesn't work out with Ken Holland, which we think is a short-term deal, I know he said it was a multi-year contract, but I can't imagine 2-3 years it would be more than that. If this doesn't work out, is Luke Robitaille the next to go?
Yeah, 100%. I don't know, maybe it stays in the organization on in a different role, maybe like just more on the business side. But as far as like the team president, yeah, he's the next in line. I mean, he's the guy who's made the decision now to go with Ken Holland. I believe he was the one who made the decision to go with Rob Blake, and then they always seemed like two peas in a pod throughout this entire tenure. So yeah, I mean, it'd probably be him and Jim Hiller along with him if things don't go the right way as soon as next season.
All right, up next, we're going to talk about some possible players for the Kings. We'll bring up Mitch Marner, of course, so we'll do that next here on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments, whether it's in-game, as far as a winning shot or a breakout player. There's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and during the live action with player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays. Fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. Which players showing up in the biggest moments? How could tracking their trends help you build your next big bet? What would it look like to combine live prop bets mid-game based on how the action is unfolding? If you've got a read on who's heating up, why not back it up with the same-game parlay? Could a $200 bonus in bets add to the excitement if your first $5 bet hits? New to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com, place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. We're wrapping it up with Russell Morgan of Hockey Royalty. You can follow him on X, Twitter, at NHL Russell. Well, you've already answered this question, and I was a little bit surprised to hear it, but you are not in favor of bringing Vladislav Gavrikov back. So that, yes, would certainly open up a hole in the defensive end of side of things. Who would you be looking at? Is there any names in free agency as far as the blue line that you're looking at to bring in for the Kings?
Yeah, just to kind of preface with Gavrikov, the only reason I'm kind of in favor with not maybe bringing him back is because the price tag. And you look at the free agent pool, especially on the defensive side, Gavrikov could potentially be the biggest name on the market, which is kind of insane to think about. And I think that just goes to show how there's not that much quality in the free agent pool. So, I mean, there's going to be a team out there that's maybe going to offer Gavrikov close to like $8 million a year for like 6 years. So if I'm the Kings, I'm like, okay, we appreciate everything you've done. We obviously traded a first round pick and more forward to get you. But I think in the 2.5 years that he's been in LA, I think there's been a lot of good. So I think you could just say that trade was maybe I would say it was a successful one, even though it didn't turn into any postseason wins. But yeah, if Gavrikov is able to get that kind of money, I'll just say, okay, good job, Vladdy. Have fun wherever you're at. So yeah, as far as some other names that are out there, I know Aaron Ekblad. I've been a big fan of what he's been able to do in Florida. He's that type of maybe playoff type of veteran leader that this team could have, especially maybe on the right side where you have Drew Doughty, who's maybe only going to be around for a couple more years. Ekblad, I believe, is 29 years old, going to be 30 years old starting as soon as next year. You can have him around for maybe the sunset of his career and then kind of help him groom Brandt Clarke and get Brandt Clarke a little bit more, comfortable into his top four role and doesn't have to really vault him into that role right away. But yeah, besides that, Dmitry Orlov is out there. My colleague Joe Paterino at Hockey Royalty, he's a big fan of him. I'm not necessarily the biggest fan. Like I said, I think with the free agent pool being as minimal as it is, there's going to be some teams out there that are really going to overpay for a lot of big names or for a lot of the names that are there. So I'm not sure, and that's really kind of it in my opinion. There's some other names, but none of them really attract me. So I think the trade route would be the best route for the Kings to go. Bo Byram is a big name that I'm a fan of out of Buffalo. Left shot defenseman, very good in terms of moving the puck, offensive threat that the Kings don't have on the left side. And looking at Buffalo, they could be maybe desperately trying to move him out, especially when you have players like Owen Power and Rasmus Dahlin already on the left side. And Bo Byram seems to be a guy that wants to take that next step into being a top four defender. So yeah, I don't know what the price tag would be. Actually, I was kind of looking at comparable trades for what would it be for like a 24, 25-year-old defenseman who's going to be an RFA. And the Jacob Trouba to New York trade is what came to mind. And New York traded a first-round pick and Neil Pionk for Jacob Trouba, who was an RFA similar to what Bo Byram is. Pionk was an undrafted defenseman who had put up, I believe, 26 points in 73 games the year prior. Jordan Spence, a fourth-round pick, put up 28 points in 76 games last year. So I don't know if the Kings maybe put something together for a player like Bo Byram to maybe fit that role. So yeah, that's kind of where, as far as trying to bring in a defenseman, I'd go the trade route.
As far as Mitch Marner goes, he's going to command a ton of money. Clearly the biggest name as far as being an unrestricted free agent that we expect to be available. I don't know that I'm the biggest Mitch Marner fan in the world, but I do like the idea of the Kings being in on the biggest free agents out there, right? We see it with the Dodgers. We see it with the Lakers. You know, there's certainly a big part of me that wants to see the Kings be players when it comes to getting the biggest names out there. And that's probably the biggest reason why I'd like to see the Kings go after a Mitch Marner. What are your thoughts on him? Is he the type of guy that can make that difference for the Kings?
Yeah, there's a lot of question marks over whether a team should give him a $13, $14 million deal. I'm not one of those questioning that. I think he definitely deserves that contract. I know a lot of people are comparing, well, why are you paying him more than Mikko Rantanen or any other player on the contract? I mean, that's just the day and age we're living in now. I mean, it's the rising cap era at the moment. You're going to see these contracts be doled out, And Mitch Marner just so happens to be the first real superstar free agent that's going to get those contracts. So it is what it is. So as far as whether he can make an immediate impact on the Kings and take them to the playoff, like a legitimate Stanley Cup contender, I still have some reservations over that. If it's just Mitch Marner that the Kings are getting, I don't know if that puts them in the same realm as like a Dallas, Edmonton, Florida. But like, that's not to say I'm not trying to go out there and get him. What I would do is I would try to go out and sign Mitch Marner and then make some other trades, whether it be like a trade like a Trevor Moore or Phil Deneau, and try to open up some space here and there to try to upgrade the defensive side, like I just said, and try to figure out that side too, as well as bringing in Mitch Marner. Because if you're able to add a Mitch Marner and have a line like a Fiala, Byfield, Marner starting next year, I mean, you have a legitimate first line that can rival a lot of top lines across the National Hockey League, let alone just the Western Conference. So if you get that, as well as trying to add like a Bo Byron to the defensive side, now we're cooking with peanut oil. Like, I love it. So it's like, yeah. So Mitch Marner, just to kind of wrap it up, I would say, yeah, I'm a big fan of him. Not if it's just him. I would like to see other pieces be improved as well. But that would have to take some trades. I mean, the Kings have like close to $23 million, I believe, in cap space. That gets whittled down pretty quickly when you're talking about an RFA contract that needs to give into Alex Ferrier. You're talking about a backup goaltender role that still needs to be fit. I don't think it's going to be Eric Portillo. I think they're going to probably go out and look for like a veteran name to fill that spot, which is going to take away like $1 to $1.5 million there. And you're talking about some fourth line spots that need to be filled that were filled by Tanner Jeannot as soon as last season, and maybe some other roles here and there. So yeah, and not to mention the top four defensive side that we talked about. So yeah, I mean, if you go out and get Mitch Marner, that's really going to take a lot of the cap space that the Kings have. So you're probably looking at a trade, whether it be like Trevor Moore or Phil Deneau, to open up some more cap space that can fill some other roles here and there.
You talked about getting a guy that can be a difference maker in the playoffs, not someone who's not going to sit back, right? Someone who's going to be attacking constantly. I love Sam Bennett. I would love to have him on the LA Kings. He's absolutely killing it this postseason, and his price is certainly going up. Not going to be Mitch Marner, but he's going to be expensive. Is that a possibility? Is that someone you think the Kings could target?
If you had asked me like a month ago, I'd be like, yeah, all for Sam Bennett. Like, let's see what he can get. But now it seems like with each passing game, especially the game last night that he had against Carolina where he had those 2 goals, that price tag is only going to go up. And I think EJ Raddick shared on Twitter that there's a team that's willing to offer him close to $10 million. And I'm like, I don't love the player that much, to be honest with you. I mean, even $8 million is still a hefty price. Something I'd be very nervous about offering him. But if there's a team willing to give him $10 million, I mean, go for it. It's sad to lose that player in free agency, but I'm not willing to pay that price tag.
So we know what we'd like to see the Kings do. Ultimately, do you have a good feel for what you think they will do? I mean, just a couple of things. This is not. Do you think they're going to make some big swings? Do you think they're going to really go out and try and make some significant changes, or is it going to be just a little tweak here and there?
No, I really do think that they are going to make some significant changes. You kind of look at the tenure of Ken Holland just as recently as at Edmonton. I mean, he was willing to make big moves. I mean, the Matthias Ekholm trade in the middle of the season where he traded Tyson Barrie, who was a player that was very important to the Oilers team at that time. I believe he was like running their power play. I mean, this is a GM who's not afraid to making shrewd big moves. So yeah, I mean, like we talked about, he said he's going to be aggressive. He's not coming in here just to sit back and just let the team be who they've been in the past. I'm sure he's going to try to put his stamp on the team and make the big moves that are going to take them over the hump. And from everything I've heard, from Luc Robitaille to Ken Holland, and even talking to some of the players and coaches, like, yeah, it seems like everything's on the table in terms of what the Kings need to do, whether it be trading their first round pick as soon as this year, which I'm totally for, and making other big moves. I mean, you got a couple young goaltenders and Carter George and Hampton Slakinski. Who knows? Maybe one of those might be some enticing trade assets to another team. So, and you got Liam Greentree, who's a really up-and-coming first-round prospect from last year's draft. I'm not saying any players. There's some players that are untouchable, but I'm willing to put anything on the table in order to put this team over the hump to really make them a legitimate Stanley Cup contender quickly. Because I don't know how long this group of Kings players has in terms of Stanley Cup window, but it's not long, in my opinion. So you got to be able to make some moves to make them a legitimate contender as soon as possible.
That is Russell Morgan. He is from Hockey Royalty. Check out the podcast and the website, hockeyroyalty.com, and follow him on X and Twitter. He is at NHL Russell. Russell, always appreciate your time. Good talking to you. Good to get some of your insights. And I'm sure we'll talk to you again at some point this offseason before we get things going for another year.
Yes, sir, Eddie. Good talking to you, man. Take it easy.
All right. Thank you, Russell. Hope you guys enjoyed that. Always appreciate when Russell joins us. And want to thank you, obviously, for joining us as well. For you everydayers, those that listen and watch Locked On Kings every day, we've got more shows coming up, obviously, in the offseason. Going to have more player spotlights, going to look at some of the free agents, and maybe even talk about some of the things Russell talked about as far as players that the Kings may go out and get. Looking forward to that. If you want to email the show, the email address is lockedoneddie@gmail.com, EDDIE. You can always leave your comments if you're watching on YouTube in the comments section. We appreciate that as well. And we love you to stay interactive with the show on social media, X, Twitter, Instagram. We are at Locked On LA Kings. I'm Eddie Garcia. Thanks for listening and watching this episode of Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Have a great rest of your day. We'll talk to you next time. And as always, go Kings, go.